This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, welcome to the June Brown Bag. Today we're going to be talking about creating custom genealogy maps for free with Google. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. So just a little bit about me. My name is Hannah Kubachok, and I'm the reference librarian at the Waco Genealogy Center. And I started here in 2015, so it's been about 5 years since I started. But I've been doing genealogy for a bit longer than that, and I'm really excited to share with you today what I think is one of the most helpful tools that you can use when doing your research and sharing your research, which is creating maps. So let's get started. Today we're going to discuss some of the various map products that are offered by Google for free and explore how to create maps in these programs. We're also going to look at some examples of how this can relate to your research and how it can benefit you and help you share family stories with others. So there's 4 different Google products that we're going to touch on today: Google Tour Builder, Google Maps, and then the 2 different versions of Google Earth. And in your handout today, there are 2 separate handouts. One talks about the Google Maps Your Places tool, and the other talks about Google Earth Pro, as those are the 2 programs that we're going to focus the most on today. So first, I just want to touch briefly on Google Tour Builder. This software has a lot of potential, but it's still in its beta phase, which means it's still in testing, but it is available for use. There's a few interesting things that you're able to do with it, but I don't think it's as fully functional as the other Google products we're going to talk about, and there's still a lot of room for improvement. But I'm mentioning it because I want you to know it's out there, and in the future, this may be a really cool product to use. And then there's Google Earth Chrome. So this is the web-based version of Google Earth Pro. And it's considered the light version, which means it doesn't have quite as many features as the Pro version, but more and more features are being added. And in the future, it may have the same functionality or more of the same functionality as the Pro version. And it's really useful for presenting a family story, but we'll talk more about this a little bit later on. Then there's Google Earth Pro. So even though it is a pro software, it is still a free download, and it's something that you download to your desktop, and it has the most features of any of the Google Map products out there. And it does require a little bit more practice and a little bit more patience than some of the other ones we'll talk about, but it's definitely worth exploring. And then Google Maps Your Places is what we're going to start with today. So this is part of Google Maps. If you've ever looked up directions using Google, you've used Google Maps. But the Your Places tool is a feature within this software that requires that you be logged into your Google account to use. So your Google account is the same as your Gmail. So if you already have a Gmail, you already have a Google account. Just sign into your Gmail and you're good to go. If you don't, a Google account or a Gmail account is free to create, and it gives you access to this service as well as many others. And we'll talk about why it's necessary to have a Google account as we go. So it is a web-based product, which means that you don't have to download anything onto your computer, and anytime you log into your account from anywhere, you will have access to all of the maps that you've created in the Your Places feature previously. And it's really easy to share these maps with others or add your map to a website or share it on Facebook. You have a lot of options with how to share what you create. And it's a much simpler mapping tool than Google Earth. The features are much easier to use. There aren't as many features, which makes it just a really clean, seamless process. So to get to Your Places, you'll want to go to first google.com, And then once you're logged into your account, you'll click up in the top right-hand corner. You see a little menu that has those 9 dots and a grid, and then you'll click Maps. Once Maps opens, you'll click on the menu icon in the top left-hand corner. That's those 3 lines up there. And then you'll get this menu that's on the left-hand side. And there's a few different options you have, but what you're looking for is down there in the middle where it says Your Places. Once you click on Your Places, it'll take you to this next page, which is on the right. And from there, up at the top, you see there's 4 tabs labeled, saved, visited, and maps. You want to click on Maps. From here, you have a few options. Any maps that have been shared with you or that you have created will be listed there. And then down at the bottom, you also have the option to create a map. If you click on a map you've edited before, it'll bring up a menu that looks similar to this. And then if you would like to edit it, you'll click Open in My Maps. And that will take you to the editing screen. Otherwise, if you want to create a new map, it'll take you to a page that looks like this. And so this is just a blank map before anything has been started. And so you see that it's untitled. And so to change the title, you just click where it says Untitled Map in the top left and type in whatever title you want. And this can be edited at any point. And so if you name it one thing and decide you'd rather name it something else, you'll just click on the title again, and it'll give you the option to change it. You can also rename the layers. So you'll, in the same way, click where it says Untitled Layer and name it whatever you'd like. And any changes you made are automatically saved in your Google Drive. So this means it's automatically saved to your Google account, and that's why it's so important that you create the Google account. That way everything is saved in one place and you'll always have access to it. You can also choose your base map. So there are 9 different options for the style of map you'd like to use. So these include everything from satellite maps to terrain maps, political maps, different color combinations. You can change these out at any point in the process. So sometimes it's helpful to create your map while using satellite views so you can see buildings or property lines more easily. And then before you share your map, you might want to switch it to a different color palette or a simpler view. It's really your choice. So the first thing you're going to want to do once you get started is add places to your map. That's what you're here for, is creating that map. So to add a new place to a map, you can start by searching for the name of a place in the search bar at the top of the screen. And then you'll pick the place that looks like what you are searching for, and it'll pop it up with a marker somewhere on the map. If this is the correct location that you were looking for, you'll click Add to Map in the little bubble that is popped up. And that will add it as a point on your map, and it will automatically be saved in your map legend. Once it's been added to your map, you're able to edit information about your location. To do this, you want to click on that pencil icon at the bottom of the bubble that appears. And you can change the title, you can add a description. You can also change the color or the image of the icon. You have several different color options to choose from. You also have several different types of icons to choose from. So they automatically put the popular icons there in the middle, and then any recent special icons you've used show up there in that other icons section. And they have lots of different options to choose from. You can even upload your own images to use as an icon for your marker. If you do this, I recommend you pick something very small and simple. Otherwise, it very quickly clutters the map and can make it difficult to view. So here I'm marking a cemetery, so I chose to use a little ghost icon. If the place you want to add doesn't come up in a search, you can also add a marker. You do this underneath the search bar. There's a little icon that looks like a map marker. When you click on that, it'll give you the option to place it wherever you want. So you'll click on add marker and then click wherever you want on the map and it'll place that marker there. You can move the location later by dragging the marker to a new spot. You can rename it. So this was the 8th point that I added to my map. So it automatically named it point 8. You can rename it to whatever you'd like, as well as add a description and then click save. Once the place is saved, you're then able to edit the icon the same as we did previously, and you can change the color and you can go back and rename it if you'd like. Because at any point you can rename or redo anything that you've done to your map and all of your changes are automatically saved in your Google Drive. When you create a new point, it's only added to your map. It's not added to Google's search engine. So you don't have to worry about marking a place that's private or something you don't want other people to see because it's only putting it in your map. It's not adding it to Google. I find it really helpful to add detailed descriptions to my markers. And when you add a description, it's just any information that you want to be able to remember about a place without having to look it up again. So this information came from Find a Grave. Unfortunately, this cemetery no longer looks like a cemetery. All of the headstones have been removed. And so if you were to go to this cemetery, you wouldn't recognize it. And so I wanted that to be in my notes on this map. I also chose to make the icon a different color from the other cemeteries that I was mapping. That way, just at a glance, I would recognize that there was something different about the cemetery. And then when I click on it, I can read this description and know why. You're also able to add photos or videos to your icons. So each place, if you want to add a photo of that place or a document that goes along with that place, you're able to do that. And there's several different options. You can either upload your own file, you can do a Google image search. They have lots of options for adding. To add that photo, what you'll want to do is click the camera icon at the bottom of the bubble right next to the pencil icon that you use to edit the description and title. So you're able to create multiple layers within your map. And a layer is an easy way to separate and organize information. So on this map, I've been mapping cemeteries near west. And so I created one layer that's just general cemeteries and a second layer that is cemeteries where I have family buried. So if I want to view just the cemeteries where my family is, I can uncheck the box next to cemeteries and it will show just the cemeteries with my family. But if I want to view all of the cemeteries, I can check both boxes and see all of them together at once. If at some point I want to move a cemetery to a different layer, all I have to do is click on the name of the cemetery and drag it to the other layer. So if in the future I discover that I have a family member buried at Bold Springs Cemetery, all I would have to do is click on that title that says Bold Springs Cemetery and then hold it down and drag it to cemeteries with my family. You can also rearrange the order of your markers within a layer by dragging them around the list. So I wanted them to be in alphabetical order, so I placed them that way. So when you share a map, this is what it will look like. You can choose if you want the people you share it with to also be able to edit the information, or if you want them to only be able to view the information. You can also choose whether the map is made public or only able to be seen by those you specifically share the link with. You can also share it on Facebook or Twitter. You can also embed it on a site. So if you have a family website or blog, you can upload your map to your website so that people can view it there. When people view your map, they can view specific layers or they can view the entire map. And when they click on an icon, the description as well as any images that you've added are going to appear on the left-hand side of the screen like you see here. And then you're able to click on those images and it'll blow up so you can see more detail. So this would be a great way to attach documents to a location. For example, if you were marking a church, you might want to share a baptismal record image or the image of a marriage license or wedding photos. You could attach all of those to a location marker. So that way when you share the map, people are able to see any images that you have associated with that map. So now we'll go through some examples of different types of maps that you can create to help with your genealogy research. There's so many applications for these maps. I really recommend playing around and seeing what types of maps you think to create because the possibilities are really endless. So let's look at a few different examples. You can create a migration path map. So for this map, I marked every location that I had documentation of my ancestor living, from his birth in what's now Poland all the way through his journey to Texas and the places he lived in Texas. So to create a path, you'll want to choose the Add Line or Shape tool, which is right next to that Markers tool under the search bar. And then you'll click, once you've clicked Add Line, you'll click along all the spots that you want that line to connect to. I think the easiest way to do this is to zoom out until you can see all of the points that you want your line to connect to, and then click on each one in order. Now, if you have to zoom out really far like I did for this map, sometimes it's difficult to get it exactly on your marker. Just get as close as possible because you can always edit the line later. Once you've clicked your last point for your line, hit enter and your line will be added to your map. So here you can see that my point didn't quite get to my marker in Perry like I had hoped it would. So in order to edit this, what I'll do is I'll click on the line on that point that's not quite to Perry, and I will drag it to the marker in Perry. If I want to add an additional point on this line, I'll use the shadow dot between 2 points. And so that is that sort of faded dot halfway between the 2 white circles. So right here, we have this little dot, and if I click on that, it'll create a new point along this line that I can place wherever I'd like. And the color of your line can be changed at any point, just like the color of your markers. You can also change its width, its transparency. So here again is another example of that migration map. You can even map multiple ancestors' migrations and then compare those routes. So I made a different layer for each ancestor and then marked their points, and now I'm able to compare the path that several of my family members all took to come to Central Texas. And so it's interesting to see if multiple family lines followed similar migration routes, or maybe they all came from very different origins to eventually end up in the same place. And it's an interesting way to look at your research in a new light. You can also use the Add Line tool to draw a shape. This is really helpful if you want to mark off a piece of property or maybe an enumeration district, some type of region. You can do that with the Add Line tool by drawing a shape. And the way you'll do a shape is click on each corner of the shape that you want to create. And when you get back and click on the first dot you created for a second time, it'll close your shape. And just like a line, it can be edited as needed. So you can readjust the different points. You can change the color. You can change the transparency of the fill. Another type of map you could create is a historic locations map. So if you're researching a community that had businesses that once existed that no longer exist, and you'd like to keep track of those as you do your research, or if you had multiple ancestors who all lived in close proximity and you're trying to keep track of who lived where, you can track all of that using a historic location map. So in this example, I've mapped the community of Long Branch, Texas, and a few of the businesses that used to be there. And so this can be a helpful reference and a way to communicate information with others as well. As I was creating this map, I decided I needed a bit of help from someone who knew the community and had done a bit more research than I had. And so I decided to share it with this person. And so I clicked the share icon, which you find underneath your title and description for your map. And then that gave me the ability to choose whether I wanted to send a link through email or Facebook. And so I chose to invite someone. I put their email address. I have it covered up by a blue box down there at the bottom of that screen capture. And then I wrote a message and I sent it off. That way they could have the link and edit the map. You can choose whether the people you share the map with can edit or only view it. But because I was wanting help in marking these locations, I chose to allow them to edit the map. I was nervous, however, about something that I had done or information I had being lost. And so before I shared it, I also created a copy of my map. To create a copy, you can click the little dot, dot, dot menu, which is to the right of the title, and click Copy Map. That will create a second copy of the map that you've been working on. And so I named my second copy, Private Copy of Historic Long Branch. This allows me to know that my information can still be accessible, even if someone goes in and edits anything I've put in. Another type of map that I've created is Origins of Immigrant Ancestors. So in this map, I identified all of my mother's immigrant ancestors and mapped their hometowns of where they lived before immigrating to the United States. And I created two layers, one for my maternal grandfather and one for my maternal grandmother. That way I could compare where the two families were from and see if any of them came from nearby each other or if they were all pretty spread out. And so this is really interesting. You can also compare this kind of map if you've done a DNA test to your DNA ethnic origins results and see how it adds up. When I created this map, I also made sure to leave myself detailed descriptions that explained why I had marked each location and what records I had that matched this person. That way, I can reference it quickly without having to go back and look at my notes. Another type of map that I've created is the participating locations map for the genealogy lock-in. So this is a list of all of the different locations that participated in the 2019 genealogy lock-in. And so creating a map like this, if you're having some type of event, can be really helpful because you're able to mark in a way that people can easily relate to where all of the locations are so you can find the library nearest you. You could also do this to mark libraries that you'd like to visit or go do research in to find information about your ancestors. Another type of map that might be helpful in your research is if you're planning a genealogy trip. So if you're planning to travel somewhere to do research, you can mark all of the locations that you'd like to visit, such as libraries, cemeteries, churches, and mark all of those on a map. That way you can see what's closest to each other so you can plan your time more efficiently. So all of the changes that you make in these maps are automatically saved to your Google Drive. But you also have the ability to download the map as a file. This will download the map as either a KML or a KMZ file. This is a file type that can only be read by mapping software, so it's not something that you'll be able to open up as an image. Similar to the way a GEDCOM file transfers your family tree from one genealogy software to another. And you can choose to export either your entire map or a single layer. So here I'm just exporting the layer that maps Gustav Richter from Germany to Texas map. When you click export, you'll go to the little menu to the right of the title and you'll click export to KML/KMZ. And then it gives you two options. You can check either box or you can check neither box. And the right choice really depends on what you are transferring the file to. So different softwares may be more compatible than others with some of the features that you've used. And so you may have to play around a little bit with what is the best way to download the information. And you may have to tweak the map a little bit once you get it into the new software. So now we're going to talk about Google Earth Chrome. This is the web-based Google Earth product. It doesn't have all of the features of Google Earth Pro, but it has many of the same features that we just discussed in Your Places, and they look very similar and work in much the same way. This product also has an additional tool that I find really useful for telling a family story. And here's the URL, earth.google.com/web, to access Google Earth Chrome. When you go to Google Earth Chrome, there's an icon on the left-hand side that looks like a little map with a pin marker in it. This is the Your Projects tab. Down at the bottom, once you click Your Projects, there is a tutorial video. It's a short video, but I highly recommend you watch it because it does an excellent job of explaining the different features that are available within Google Earth Chrome. And then you have two options. You can either open or create a file. Create allows you to start a new project from scratch, while open allows you to import a KML file. So this would be the file that you may have downloaded from the Your Places tool. And remember that some edits may need to be made when transferring a map from one service to another. So here's an example of my map that I transferred from Google Your Places to Google Earth Chrome. It creates this presentation that you're able to follow along, and your descriptions can help you tell the story of your ancestor. And so I'm able to demonstrate that he was born in what is now a place in Poland, but was originally in Prussia. And then he, his mother, and his sister sailed out of Bremen, Germany on the ship, and I was able to find an image of that ship. And you can add multiple images to each marker. And so I also added an image of their names on the ship register. And then I marked each of the locations that the ship stopped at on its way to Galveston, which is where they disembarked. And then I was able to map each of the locations they lived in Texas. So I have his marriage to Anna Kaza, and then I was able to attach an image of their marriage record. I've marked their homes from the census records. You can add family photos. This allows you to create both a timeline as well as a great visual aid for sharing this kind of story with other family members. And now we're going to talk about Google Earth Pro. So this is not the Chrome version. This is the one that you download, and it's compatible with PC, Mac, or Linux operating systems. And it's also available on all of the public genealogy computers in the Genealogy Center. Make sure you save your work to a flash drive if you are using the public computers in the Genealogy Center. If you're at home, you can save it to your computer or to a flash drive, but know that it's not automatically saved to your Google Drive like the other programs we've looked at so far. Google Earth Pro is saved locally to your device. You can create your own maps in Google Earth Pro, but there's also a lot of maps that have already been created that you have access to for free. This means you don't have to create all of the maps that you might be interested in. So there's certain maps that have been geo-referenced. This means they're a historic map that has been overlaid with a modern map. And these will be either a KMZ or a KML file type, which is, as we discussed, the file type that's used for maps. Some can be found within the Google Earth Pro software itself, and others can be downloaded and added to the software. So to find the ones that are already loaded in the software when you download it, you'll want to look at the left-hand side of the screen and you'll see the layers menu. As you go down through the different layers options, you'll see one that says Gallery. If you drop down the list by clicking the arrow next to Gallery, it'll give you a list of different maps that have been added. The Rumsey historical maps all come from the David Rumsey Map Collection, which is a free website that has so many historic maps and is really worth checking out. And so if you check the box next to Rumsey historical maps, this is what happens. Medallions will appear all over the screen that represent different available maps. And so then if you click on a medallion, this little window will pop up. This window gives you a brief description of the map, as well as links where you can learn more about the map, where you can download the map. And then if you click on the image of the map itself, it'll show you the overlay with the modern map. And then you can use the transparency tool, which is over there on the left-hand side between the Places tab and right above the Layers tab. There's a little magnifying glass, and then next to the magnifying glass is a square. You'll want to click on the square, and that will pull up this little blue slide bar that you see the green arrow pointing to. And so this blue slide bar will allow you to make the map more opaque or more transparent. And it makes it so that you're able to compare the historic map with the modern map. The larger the map, the less likely it is to match up in all locations with the modern map. This is because it would have been very difficult to scale a map that covers half the continent, especially the further back in history you go. When you view a map from the gallery, it's automatically added to your temporary places. When you close out of Google Earth, anything in your temporary places will not be saved. So if you'd like to save it, you want to drag it to the My Places section, and you can create folders within that section to keep you more organized. And then to save, you'll want to go up to the top of the page and click File, Save, and Save My Places. And that'll save everything to your computer. You can also rename maps, and you can do this in Windows by right-clicking on the title of the map and then typing in the new title that you'd like. A few things to remember: not all of the maps from the David Rumsey collection are already in Google Earth. So you can go to davidrumsey.com and find additional maps that haven't already been georeferenced and create your own georeference of that map. And we'll talk about how to do that in just a minute. The larger the map, the less precise the georeferencing typically is, because it would have been difficult to precisely scale a map. So keep that in mind, both at the maps you're looking at that are already loaded, but also at maps you choose to overlay yourself. Here's an example of part of the Rumsey collection that's already loaded in Google Earth Pro. And this is a map of 1857 Chicago. It was a pocket map. And it's really interesting because it was created before the Chicago fire of 1871. And so you can see how the fire affected certain parts of the city. This map also overlays extremely well with a modern map, and you can easily see some of the changes that have been made over the past 150 years. So if we come down here and look at Union Park, we can see that it's roughly the same as it was in 1857. But this road that cuts diagonally next to Union Park now extends on and continues, whereas in 1857, it ended next to the park. It didn't continue upwards. And those types of things become very obvious once you overlay two maps. And so you're able to see more of what a community may have looked like at the time your ancestors lived there. More than just the United States have been mapped and added to this collection. There's maps for around the world. Every continent except Antarctica has geocoded maps in this collection. So here's an example of a 1790 map of Scotland. But just looking at all of the medallions across the map, you can see how many there are that exist in just this small corner of Europe. So now let's talk about creating an overlay for your own maps that you find that aren't already georeferenced. So here's an example of a map that I created using Waco Sanborn maps over the city of Waco. And I have the 3D buildings layer turned on, which is why you see modern buildings coming up through the map. So the first step is finding the map you want to georeference. So I wanted to look for Sanborn maps, which are fire insurance maps that were created for communities all across the United States. The University of Texas has a large collection of these maps for Texas cities. You can also find them through the Library of Congress, as well as other maps through the Library of Congress. And the Waco Library also has an e-resources page that has access to quite a few Texas Sanborn maps as well. And then you want to find the map that you want to overlay and find its equivalent location in Google Earth on the modern map. So here I have a historic map of what is now Washington and University Parks. And then I also have the modern view of that same intersection. Once you've found the map, you'll want to copy the URL and come back to Google Earth Pro. And then up at the top of your screen, there's an icon that looks like one rectangle laying on top of another. This is the overlay tool. When you click on that, it'll bring up this window that allows you to edit the image overlay. You'll give it a name and you'll paste the link to the image where it says link. You can also browse your computer if you have a map that is saved on your computer. And then you can adjust the transparency between clear and opaque using that blue slide bar. You also have the ability to edit the description if you'd like to put in a description for the map. And then you're able to adjust the map. So it's not automatically going to line up exactly how it should because it hasn't been georeferenced yet. That's what you're doing. So the map may be really large or really small compared to the space, and you can adjust that by dragging any of the corners and sort of push and pull to stretch it to the right size. And then you can also orient the image to the correct direction. And you'll do that by grabbing this little square right here. And when you click on that and drag it, it'll twist the map in different directions and you can orient it so it's facing the correct way. You can also use this cross in the middle to drag the map across the screen. It helps to adjust the transparency so that you can see through the historic map to see how it's lining up with the modern map as you go. Once you have it lined up the way you'd like, you can then explore and see how much the landscape has changed. So here there used to be a creek that ran through that part of town, and now there's a couple of hotels right there. There also used to be a neighborhood that is where University Parks now runs. And you can choose what information shows up on your layers. So you may want the name of roads to appear, or you may not. You may want the buildings to appear in 3D, or you may not. You really have a lot of options, and you can just turn them on and off easily by checking the boxes in the layers tool. And then don't forget to save. So maps will be saved to this software, that specific download on your computer, not to your Google account. And they will only be accessible from that device unless you choose to save it to a flash drive or an external hard drive and then open it up from another computer that has the Google Earth Pro software. So to save it, you'll click Save, Save As, and then you'll choose your device. Another type of map that you can do in Google Earth Pro that is more difficult to do in the other mapping softwares is plotting land surveys. So if you have a deed record of your ancestors' land or some other type of documentation that outlines where they lived, you can plot that land on a map. This can help you see the distance between family members, how far an ancestor moved, the different land holdings they had over time. You can map all of the neighbors in a community, and you can see what is on that land now. So in order to do this, there's a really helpful tool that you'll need to download, and this is a free download. So most states, well actually about half of the states, but most of the land mass in the United States is surveyed using the Public Land Survey System to describe the land locations. This is represented by township and ranges. So the next example we'll be looking at uses the Public Land Survey System. Before you start, you're going to want to download the PLSGE Public Land Survey Google Earth Map from this website, and here's the URL. Once it's downloaded, here's what you get. It'll automatically launch in Google Earth Pro, and you want to move it out of your temporary places and move it into My Places. That way it'll be saved with your software and you won't have to re-download it again in the future or the next time you log in. If you click on the About section where it says About PLSGE, it'll give you a detailed instruction guide, because we're just going to hit the highlights right now. So you have 4 types of overlays available: meridians, Alaska SDMS, townships, and special surveys. And then you have 2 search functions, a point search and a township and range search. And you can check any of those boxes to indicate what you'd like to use. Here's what the meridian overlay looks like. It shows you where all of the different meridians are and what states they represent. A meridian is just a reference point that's used in the township and range description. So if you had ancestors that lived in any of these states that have been colored in, that means that when you're looking at their land records, you're going to see it as part of the PLSS system, which means you can search for it using this tool. So using that document I had earlier, I knew where my ancestors' land was, and I was able to use their TRS search to find it. So if you already have the township and range information for your ancestor, because you can't search by name, you have to know what the township and range and the meridian was. And you can find that in deed records. The Bureau of Land Management site is where I found this document. If you have land allotments or lotteries, wills, there's lots of records where you'll find your ancestors' land described using this system. So I put in that it was part of the Chickasaw Meridian, Township 4 South, Range 3 West, Section 17, and I hit search. The search can take a few minutes, so just be patient with it and let it come up, and it'll map that area for you, and so you can see precisely where that land is today. Any searches that you've done during this session will appear in your search results. But the search results are just like your temporary places. They only appear during this session. So if you close out of Google Earth Pro and open it back up, you won't see your previous search results. So if you want to save those locations, you'll want to use the polygon tool. Click on the corners around the shape you want to draw. This is just like using the add line tool that we discussed earlier, and it will create a shape. So you'll click on the polygon tool up at the top, and then each corner of the box that you're wanting to save, and then it will create this shape for you. You can then edit the title and the description. You can also go to the Style Color tab, which is right next to the Description tab. And there you can change the border color, the fill color, and the transparency if you don't want it to be a solid block. And then you can now better understand how your ancestors' land was laid out, where exactly it was, and you can map several ancestors and compare their land or several plots of land owned by one ancestor. So this is all land that was owned by my ancestor, Delilah Lovemore, near Holly Springs in Marshall County, Mississippi. And now this land would be a lot easier to find if I wanted to go see it today. I have exactly where it would be located on a modern map. This is similar to History Geo, which is a database we have available here at the Genealogy Center. And it's also a database that you could subscribe to on your own from home. The difference is in History Geo, you can search by name, but you're only searching the first person who owned that plot of land. Using this tool, any ancestor whose land you have, even if they weren't the first landowner, you're able to search for that land in here and then map it yourself. Google Earth Pro also has features similar to those that we've discussed for previous softwares. So you're able to add place markers, create paths, create stories. The big difference is Google Earth Pro is not web-based. All of the work you have will be saved to your computer or a flash drive or an external hard drive. It's not automatically saved to your Google Drive. So when you're saving, you'll go up to File at the top and then Save. If you want to save to a different device, you'll click on Save Places As and then choose where you want to save it. If you want to save it to the device you're currently working on, you can just click Save My Places. And as you're doing this, remember to be patient with yourself and the software. There are a lot of available features and a lot to learn about this software. And we've really just sort of hit the highlights. And so be patient with yourself and don't be scared to click the wrong thing or try something new, because it's really fun once you get started. So to review some of the things that we've talked about today, all Google products mentioned here are free to use. Google Maps Your Places is the simplest tool, but it does require a free Google or Gmail account. Google Earth Chrome allows you to create a slideshow that can show important family locations, which is a fun way to share family history with others. And Google Earth Pro has the most features and pairs with many maps that have been geo-referenced by others, like the Public Land Survey tool that we looked at and the David Rumsey maps. And don't hesitate to play around with the program and experiment. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and talk to me. I'd love to chat with you about maps. You can email me at hannahk@wacotx.gov or call me at the Genealogy Center reference desk. I'm here most days. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to me talk about maps. I'd love to talk about them with you in person once the library reopens. Have a great day.